Planarcadia, the world in Canvas, is known for its Phantasmoon games and otherworldly activities, all dedicated to the elation. The 4.0 patch gives us a lot of information about this world, so today I'll be covering every aspect of Planarcadia and trying my best to explain it as simply as possible. I also have a special message towards the end of the video, so make sure to stick around. Before I start, let's split the world of Planarcadia into 4 parts. The origin, which means where did it come from, why was it created, and what problem did it solve. The structure, which are the sections of Planarcadia that we've seen so far, so something like Dual Mention City, Graphia Academy, Dovebrook District, and whatnot. The next one being function, which is how does it contribute to the HSR universe and the lore we know right now, and how it operates, so what are the laws of Planarcadia, what is the story based on, and last but not least, what role do we play, what role does the Trailblaze and the Astral Express play on Planarcadia. So, let's get started with the origin of the world. Well, firstly, where did the planet even come from? Ahatopia is a celestial body located in the Consternation Star Zone. Ahatopia had a civilization named Benzai Tengoku. The world, the civilization, and everything surrounding the celestial body were made by Aha, the Aeon of Elation. Legend has it that Aha created a living Phantasmoon to serve as a stage for fools and performers. The fools, or also known as the Basque Fools, are followers of the Elation. Although we don't know much about its past just yet, we do know that one of the ancient civilizations that I mentioned, Benzai Tengoku, was part of the first ever Phantasmoon games. Whenever the Phantasmoon, which is exclusive to Ahatopia, is full, the games commence and allow the winner to have the divine authority of elation for exactly 1 minute, essentially making them an Aeon for 1 minute. Now, you might be wondering, why? Why would Aha hand over the divine authority to a complete stranger? Well, the answer is pretty simple. For fun. This isn't the only instance we've seen Aha do something like this. In the distant past, Aha made a worm an emanator of elation. Yes, a worm. Just because he found it funny. So acts like these aren't unusual for the laughter. You know what else isn't unusual? Getting stellar jades for cheaper, thanks to today's sponsor, LD Shop. If you play Honkai Star Rail, LD Shop is a top-up platform developed by the LD player team where you can save up to 30%, which is honestly kinda insane. It's also really simple. You just enter your server and your UID, no login needed, and it's safe and reliable. I've tried it myself and picked what I wanted, entered my details, paid, and the top-up showed up in-game almost instantly. The best part is you still get your first top-up bonus through LD Shop, plus if you use my link you'll get a 15% coupon and an extra 5% off, saving you up to $30. And if you spend over $80 in a month, you even get a free supply pass on top of that. So even though I'm a free-to-play player, this just seems like a good deal to me. If you're already spending on the game, you might as well spend lesser. Links in the description and pinned comment. Now let's go back to Ahatopia. The Army of Destruction, which is also known as the Antimatter Legion, had invaded the planet. The survivors of Benzai Tengoku came up with 4 strategies, or really 4 groups. The first group is the Defectors, who saw no hope in resistance and basically just gave up on their life. The second group, known as Resistors, was under the leadership of the legendary artist Graphia. This faction wielded the art of Imagenesis, which I'll get into later. They had the ability to bring creations from the canvas to reality, granting them sentience. Without this group, Planarcadia would have long since become a barren wasteland. The third group was the Evacuators. They had both power and wealth, while also being the smallest group among the 4, which consisted primarily of elites. They claimed to be the reason why the world was saved because they ran and reached out to the IPC, but they'd only say that once the world was saved. The fourth group was known as the Help Callers. Almost nothing is recorded about them, except that they pleaded with every Aeon for salvation. But even that may no longer be true, because only fragments of a legend, warped by time and retelling, exist. At the final hour of the war against the Antimatter Legion, Graphia performed a miracle. They had won the Phantasmoon games and used the power of elation to capture the entire world within a painting scroll, which ultimately saved all life forms from destruction. This is also how the world we know today as Planarcadia had earned the name the world in Canvas. Long after this miracle, the IPC, also known as the Interastral Peace Corporation, used Punklordian technology to salvage the worlds hidden within flattened paintings back into reality. They also dispatched an executor from the IPC to serve as the CEO of Planarcadia. This was also the point in time when the name of the planet went from Benzai Tengoku to Planarcadia under the guidance of the IPC. Approximately 15 years prior to the current events, the Astral Express mysteriously crashed on Planarcadia. The train was later repaired by Himiko, who subsequently assumed leadership as its new navigator, and from Planarcadia, the Astral Express departed once more, continuing its journey among the stars. That's the origin of the mysterious world known as Planarcadia. Let's dive into the structure and the multiple parts that we know so far about Planarcadia, such as Dual Mention City, Graphia Academy, the Phantasmoon Courtyard, and a ton more. I'll be covering not just locations and their origins, but also the small details you might have missed along the way. Planarcadia doesn't operate on a traditional day-night cycle. Instead, the world shifts between two emotional states, glee and gloom. Dual Mention City is the beating heart of Planarcadia's glee side, and the very first place we truly experience what this world is all about. At a glance, it feels like a hyper-modern entertainment capital. Neon lights, public plazas, crowded streets, and constant movement. But Dual Mention City isn't just busy for the sake of it. It's designed around visibility. Everything here is meant to be seen, shared, reacted to, and talked about. It's not just a city, it's more like a stage. Even the name Dual Mention hints at something deeper. It suggests dual layers, two dimensions existing at the same time. On the surface, it's a vibrant urban paradise, but beneath that, there's a second layer: reputation, perception, and public image. It's basically a perfect mirror to social media, where perfection, success, happiness, and other aspects of life are glorified, and most times even faked. I personally think that Dual Mention City is a great example of the boons and flaws of the internet as a whole, and I think it's a nice theme to cover. I like it. In the city, people don't just live physically, they exist socially. Identity here isn't private, it's broadcast. This has a deeper meaning to it, which I'll get into in the next section. The city runs on attention as much as it runs on infrastructure. When you start looking closer, the small details begin to tell a way bigger story. Places like Yum Yum Alley, formerly known as Gluttony Street, show how even something as simple as a street name can be rebranded to reshape perception. The nameless bridge exists because no one could agree on what to call it, which is a subtle nod to the society where everyone has a voice, but consensus is nearly impossible. Like I said, very similar to the internet. Entertainment Plaza, or at Entertainment Plaza, sits at the center of it all, reinforcing the fact that miracles are not really seen as something that's rare, so kinda kills the purpose of using the word miracles, but you get what I mean. It's central for the elation because people want attention, and therefore you need to do something rare, something extraordinary to get the attention of everyone else. It's central to be elated. Even shops like Infinite 11 have multiple contradictory origin stories, blurring the line between fact and narrative. Story-wise, Dual Mention City is where the cracks first begin to show. We enter through the mission called Welcome to Arcadia, expecting spectacle and celebration, but the mission titles themselves hint that the city is constructed and almost engineered around the image of performance. I wouldn't be surprised if the Trailblazers given a cup of matcha and a tote bag in the near future. Performative as fuck. When tension starts to rise, it doesn't really happen quietly. In a city built to amplify everything, even the smallest disruption becomes public. And that's what makes Dual Mention City important. It isn't just the introduction to planarcadia, but it's the controlled environment where we begin to question whether the elation is entirely genuine. The story also leans towards an alliance between multiple paths, while hinting at ulterior motives from either side, such as the preservation or even the masked fools and the elation. At its core, Dual Mention City represents the public face of planarcadia. It's polished, energetic, and constantly broadcasting. But because it's built on perception, it's also fragile. And that fragility is exactly what makes it the perfect starting point for the story. Before we can explore the darker corners of this world, we have to understand the mask that it presents first. See what I did there? Mask fools. Get it? The next location in the emotion of glee is Graphia Academy. If you were paying attention earlier, you'd notice that the academy is named after the legendary artist named Graphia. This academy focuses on artistic expression and serves as the cultural and educational hub of Planarcadia. At its core, Graphia Academy is described as an art school founded by a prestigious Planarcadian artist family dedicated to training artists. It connects directly to Dual Mention City and other key Planarcadia districts. If Dual Mention City is the stage, then Graphia Academy is the rehearsal room. It's introduced during the Welcome to Arcadia Trailblaze mission like a lot of other locations, and at first glance, it feels like your typical prestigious art institution. Tall halls, layered architecture, curated exhibits, student works lining the walls, but this isn't just an academy. It's a lot more than that. Put into technical terms, Graphia Academy is like the algorithm behind social media, which in this context is Dual Mention City. If your goal is to get attention through artistic expression, Graphia Academy helps students refine relevant skills, and it's kind of like those online courses that the alpha males try to sell to you on Instagram and TikTok. When you start looking closer, the small environmental details begin to say more than the main story ever spells out. The academy isn't just classrooms and studios, it's filled with student artworks, plaques, portraits, archives, comic rooms, and even forbidden bookshelves. There are investigation points scattered across the building that hint at legacy, prestige, and rivalry, which is more of a slice of life sort of thing. The architecture itself feels layered and almost maze-like, as if knowledge here isn't meant to be straightforward. It's curated, filtered, and framed, similar to what I said with the whole theme of social media, where there's always some sort of framing or some sort of ulterior motive or message towards it. I just thought it was a cool detail, you know? In terms of the story and the narrative, the Academy gives us a bit of knowledge about Himiko's past, while also serving as the main location for most of the tricky puzzles and conflict with Sparksy. Towards the end of the 4.0 patch, the recent history of the tragedy in the Academy had been revealed, which personally led me to believe that there's a lot more behind the Academy than shown so far. Outside of all the deep and creepy lore that we know about the Academy so far, there's actually a lot of glee behind it. The cutscenes and lore that we experience initially are so similar to a slice of life anime that it had me giggling like I was watching a romance story unfold. Multiple parts of the Academy look absolutely stunning. The world-breaking waves artwork that Graphia drew plays a core role in the story. There's also the gymnasium, the hallways, and all of it just looks so cozy. If you look closely, they've done really well in blending the high school narrative with the foundation of elation and f***ing superpowers. The classroom's full of gossip, assignment stress, and teacher relationships are fun to experience, and it really just makes everything feel way more alive. Maybe I'm just a sucker for slice of life anime, but personally, I really like the vibrant school life that they portrayed. Ultimately, Graphia Academy represents the controlled side of creativity. It looks free, it looks expressive, but it's structured, institutionalized, and organized. And that structure matters, because before a world can celebrate endlessly, someone has to define what's worth celebrating. The final location of the emotion of glee is Dovebrook District. If Dual Mention City is the stage and Graphia Academy is the rehearsal room, then Dovebrook District is the quiet neighborhood that actors go home to after the show. It's still part of planarcadia's glee side, but the energy clearly shifts. The neon fades a little, the streets feel softer and less broadcast and more breathing room. Even the name says a lot. Dove, meaning peace, and brook, meaning something that flows gently. Compared to Duo Mention's chaos and Graphia's layered prestige, Dovebrook feels intentionally calm. It's residential, it's slower, and it almost feels normal in a world full of miracles and spectacles made by the elation. At first glance, Dovebrook District looks like the slice of life counterpart to the city center. Cozy homes, community spaces, and an overall quieter atmosphere. It feels like the kind of place where people would actually live rather than perform. But remember, this is still planarcadia. And in a world built around the elation and visibility, even normalcy feels curated. When you start looking closer, the small details matter yet again. The layout is more intimate compared to Duo Mention's sprawling plazas. The environment feels designed for community interaction rather than entertainment and public spectacle. And the NPC behavior also shifts slightly. Less influencer energy, less ridiculous usernames and handles, and way lesser Sparksy craze. There's more neighborhood familiarity, and it's subtle, but it's noticeable. The glee is still there, just a little more toned down. Narratively, Dovebrook District acts as a contrast. After the overstimulation of Duo Mention City and the problem solving and, mess of puzzles in Graphia Academy and institutional tension that we see, this district kind of grounds the player. It gives the illusion of stability, and that illusion is important. Because the calmer the setting feels, the more unsettling it becomes when the story starts to pick up and when things start to shift. It isn't like the district is entirely silent, like a creepy alley. It still has stores, cars, buildings, and a bustling vibe to it because, after all, this is planarcadia. But it feels way more familiar, similar to a small neighborhood that you might see in real life. This is also the location where the Phantasmoon can be seen most clearly, and rather than being awake and hype, it's asleep. After exploring the more hidden corners of the district, we can learn about how the rocket on the Phantasmoon ended up there. There's something quietly strategic about placing a peaceful district within the glee side. It reinforces that planarcadia isn't just neon lights and applause, but it's also daily life, because at the end of the day, it's a planet. But even daily life here exists under the same emotional framework. And the only difference is how it frames itself and how it presents itself. So Dovebrook presents itself as comfort rather than miracle. And that's what makes it so interesting. It represents the softer face of glee and not the loud celebration that we see everywhere else. After leaving the community spaces and alleys full of stores and estates, the district also houses the most grand-looking building in planarcadia, the Sinwish Syndicate headquarters. Obviously, we don't know much about the Sinwish Syndicate except the fact that they're involved in organized crime, and it's also the only destination in all of planarcadia labeled Extreme Risk Do Not Enter. At the top of the Sinwish Tower is also where the boss stays. I'm not gonna go into the details of the story, but while exploring, I did find a pretty cool reference to Van Gogh's Starry Night, and I'm sure there are other paintings with similar intentions, but I'm not engrossed enough in art to recognize them. So if you see any that you might recognize, do let me know in the comments because I am pretty curious. Besides the Sinwish headquarters, there's also the building where we first meet Ashvale and Narrator. As you progress through the story, the building turns into the headquarters for the Trailblazer to run their magazine company. But in a world where perception defines reality, even peace can be part of the performance. Ultimately, I think Dovebrook District completes the trio of the Glee side. Duo Mention shows us the spotlight, Graphia shows us the system behind it, and Dovebrook shows us the lifestyle it produces. Together, they paint a full picture of how planarcadia wants to be seen: vibrant, creative, and harmonious. Whether that harmony is entirely genuine, well, that's something the story slowly starts to question. Following that, let's move on to the gloom side of planarcadia. The two locations that we know of so far in this side of the world are the World's End Tavern and the Phantasmoon Courtyard. Let's start with the Phantasmoon Courtyard. This is the first location of planarcadia that we see when the cutscene plays, and we also see Ivanicia chilling in the tree. Ivanicia? I don't know. Now, there's not much to the Phantasmoon Courtyard until I get to the next section, but just because there's not much to see doesn't mean it holds little value. I personally think that the courtyard is going to be the core location in the planarcadia arc of the story, but that's just a speculation from my side. So let's move on to the only other location left, World's End Tavern. The name doesn't really define what it is, so let me do it for you. The tavern is known to be the headquarters for the Masked Fools. Since planarcadia is surrounded by the Elation, I think it's only natural for the followers of the Elation to have their headquarters, or one of the biggest parts of their headquarters, based on the planet. Well, I know there's a common confusion with the World's End Tavern and it only existing in planarcadia, but that's not true. The World's End Tavern exists in every planet. Well, we don't really know where it exists, kinda, but there's entrances on every planet. It's just that I personally think that there's more population coming from planarcadia because, well, it's an Elation and surrounded by Elation, so that's just a personal speculation from my side. But I just want to clear up the fact that the World's End Tavern is not located in planarcadia, it's just that it has one of the biggest entrances, I think. Initially, the player is going to think, oh, it's a cool bar, but in reality, it's way more than that. This place is huge, and by huge, I mean really fucking huge. The origin or any story behind the World's End Tavern is, well, unknown to us right now. The only thing we do know is that Aha, the Eon of Elation, and the Morning Actors are banned from the tavern. The Morning Actors are a faction that firmly opposes the path of Elation, if you didn't know. As I mentioned, the tavern is huge and really confusing. So let me list the relevant and major locations for you. The Bliss Star, Fatal Joke, the Grand Treasury, and the Golden Confessional. I'm only classifying these as major locations because a major part of the story takes place in the following locations. The Bliss Star is the heart of the celebration in the tavern. It's an ever-dazzling dance floor ablaze with Aha's divine radiance. Within the chaos of Elation, the Bliss Star itself is a door to a different realm, which allows you to have an indirect audience with Aha, and it only opens to Masked Fools. Let me give you a little history lesson if you didn't watch my previous video. The ascension of Aha happened because they climbed the highest point of the imaginary tree, or basically the structure that allows for existence itself to, well, exist. They saw a newborn fall and cry, and they burst out in laughter, making them an Eon. The echo of that laughter tore through the cold universe, echoing through realms to this day. One of these echoes can be found within the Bliss Star. The tavern folks call it the echo of primordial laughter, which tore open a spatial rift. This realm is really important in the story, but as I said, I'll probably end up covering that in a different video. Oh, also, if you're enjoying so far, I'd appreciate any sort of support. Anyways, that's the Bliss Star, which is the main highlight of the tavern, but there's a lot more to explore. For example, Fatal Joke is supposed to be a hospital for Masked Fools that end up being too intoxicated from all the elation, but it also serves as a stage for comedic relief. It's quite twisted in my opinion. If you played the story, you'd understand what I mean. There's not much to Fatal Joke that really stands out besides the fact that it's really trippy, and also the fact that it's connected to both the Bliss Star and the Grand Treasury. Talking about the Grand Treasury, it's essentially just a really complicated storage room. You can find chests from every location we've been to so far in our trailblazing journey, and also other Easter eggs such as a giant stellar jade that moves you from one location to another, frames for each path in the game, more painting references, and a ton more which I won't be covering. Moving on to the final location, the Golden Confessional. As the name suggests, it's a confessional that bears all your pain, anxiety, and sorrow, so you can travel light on the path to elation. Put in simple terms, it's just a really big washroom. It has golden toilets, and it allows you to let go and release all of your sorrows. Yet again, this place plays a pretty big role in the story, so if you played the story already, you know what I'm talking about. Other than that, there's not much to the Golden Confessional. There's a few details that I can point out, such as the mirrors of the entrance, which say this. And there's also a bar and a classroom in the toilet, which is, it's quite a spectacle to witness, honestly. But let's move on from the individual rooms and talk about their significance in general. Even the name World's End says a lot about what this place represents. A tavern at the end of the world isn't just a location, it's a metaphor. It suggests a place beyond the normal rules of society, where boundaries blur and where the usual expectations of order no longer apply. Historically, the idea of a tavern at the edge of the world appears in mythology and literature as a place where travelers pause before venturing into the unknown, or where the pursuit of adventure gives way to indulgence and reflection. In a way, that idea fits perfectly with the masked fools. Their entire philosophy revolves around the idea that life should be unpredictable, theatrical, and often absurd. The tavern reportedly only serves customers who possess a sense of humor, reinforcing that this is less of a normal establishment and more of a cultural hub for those who embrace the chaotic spirit of elation. When you start looking closer at the lore surrounding the tavern, small details begin to reveal its deeper role within the world. For example, the location appears in multiple character stories tied to the masked fools. At one point, Sparkle even hides Sampo's mask inside a barrel in the tavern's cellar, turning the place into a quiet crossroads for the faction's schemes and mischief. Ultimately, the World's End Tavern represents something different from the districts we've explored so far. If places like Duo Mention City show the public spectacle of elation, and places like Graphia Academy show the structure behind creative expression, then the World's End Tavern shows the community behind the chaos. It's the place where the performers take off their masks, or sometimes put them on, and fittingly, it sits exactly where you'd expect it to, right at the edge of the world. That's the structure of planarcadia. Every location plays a key role in the world-building aspect of it, whether it be the main story or the small details that Hoyoverse is included. Let's move on to the next pillar, or next part, the function. You might be asking me, what do I mean by function? Well, it's kind of the umbrella term I'm using to discuss the main source of power in planarcadia, wish power. Not only that, but I'll also be covering the Phantom Moon games in detail, Imagine and Strangelings, well, they're basically the same thing, as well as the art of Imagenesis. So, let's get into it. Firstly, how do the characters in planarcadia even do this sort of bullshit? It's because of something called wish power. Derived from the power of the elation, wish power allows for miracles to occur exclusively on planarcadia, under the light of the Phantom Moon created by Aha. Wish power comes from the wishes, attention, and belief in things yet to exist. Almost everything in planarcadia runs off wish power, which includes architecture, industry, medicine, agriculture, and obviously Imagine. The art of Imagenesis uses wish power to create such miracles, such as the worldbreaker waves we saw during the story, made by Graphia. To put it simply, the more attention you get, the more wish power you have. And yet again, there's also a sort of parallel to the real-life social media, where the more followers you have, the more influence, therefore more power over public opinion. The world of planarcadia just turns public opinion into different forms, such as Imagenesis. Now that we know that, let me introduce the Phantom Moon games to you. I'm sure you already know a good amount if you play the story, but just a little recap. Whenever the Phantom Moon waxes full over planarcadia, the games begin. Participants, or better known as supplicants of the game, often seek to draw public attention to accumulate wish power for themselves, hoping to attract the attention of the Eon of Elation, Aha. In return for this wish power, the supplicants must each show what elation truly means. During the games, the wish power that exists under the Phantom Moon is amplified and spread across all of planarcadia, which allows supplicants to hoard the abundance of wish power to create miracles and perform extraordinary feats. During the game, the path power of elation, humanity's wish power, awakens. So this is more like the path power that humans can naturally inherit. So during the Phantom Moon games, that sort of power activates or awakens, turning human desire and imagination into a tangible force that spreads through the very substance of planarcadia. Though Imagine are born through the process of Imagenesis rather than wish power itself, humanity's wish power saturates planarcadia with the emotional energy and behavioral patterns that shape the entities produced by the process. So, to put it simply, wish power or Imagenesis creates the skeleton, and then humanity or the path power of elation is what gives them behavioral patterns and emotional energy. Now you know what the Phantom Moon games do for the planet. But what exactly do the supplicants do? How did Aha even come up with the Phantom Moon games? Well, let me explain. Remember the morning actors I mentioned a while ago? When the Phantom Moon was first created, 8 morning actors presented stories so shocking and far-fetched that they hoped to earn an audience with Aha. This performance marked the beginning of the first games. These games commence in irregular cycles, typically every 30 to 50 years. During this period, individuals from across the cosmos compete for the favor of Aha through feats designed to attract wish power, a form of collective attention and emotional resonance generated by spectators. Before the games officially begin, competitors participate in preliminary trials. The 8 individuals who succeed in these trials each claim a mask, earning the title of supplicant. A mask binds permanently to its supplicant upon being worn. Each mask takes on a form that reflects the wearer's soul and significantly amplifies their inherent abilities. Once bonded, a mask cannot be removed and becomes an extension of their identity. In the past, in some Phantom Moon games, Some supplicants claimed their masks by paying credits for them, some stole them, some inherited them from their ancestors, while others drew their own. Once supplicants claimed a mask, they must each undergo 3 key steps once the games begin: the roll call, the miracle, and the promotion. The roll call is the step where the supplicant claims the mask and declares their entry into the games, essentially drawing everyone's attention towards them. Next, they must strive to make a miracle happen, bear the people's wishes, and answer with a great feat. And finally, the promotion, which hasn't been directly addressed in the game yet, but I'm assuming it's that when they get promoted to an Aeon and are granted the Elation's divine authority. Also, another small detail is that participants can only partake in 1 Phantasm Moon games in their entire lifetime. During these games, there are special rules and exceptions for supplicants, such as no external interference being allowed from the IPC or any authoritative body. If a supplicant decides to reveal the fact that they're participating in the games, attention is eventually bound to converge onto them, granting them a lot of wish power, which then obviously gives them the ability to create even bigger miracles. I mentioned this before, but let me remind you, the supplicant who rises above all the others receives the blessing of elation and is granted a face-to-face audience with Aha. During this meeting, Aha listens to the victor's wishes, and the victor is granted Aha's divine authority for 1 minute. The use of this authority varies wildly, often with unpredictable and far-reaching consequences. The known winners of the Phantasm Moon games are on the screen right now, and I'm not going to be reading all of them because it's a good amount of stuff. But you can read this, and there are also a few more, but they are made by the history fictionologists, or like what we know so far is made up by the history fictionologists. And if you don't know what those are, they're kind of the followers of the Enigmata. So they just confuse people, and history is like or memories, or the truth is their arch nemesis. And I'll link up the video on the screen right now where the history fictionologists kind of give us more information on planarcadia, but I won't be considering them as factual unless they're explicitly mentioned. Now, let me talk about how artists use this wish power to bring stuff to life, also known as imagenesis. It's the art of creating imagine, and the people who practice it are called imagenists, I think. These imagenists are primarily trained at Graphia Academy, as I mentioned before. Imagenesis was a natural process that happened during the waxing of the Phantasm Moon, where the commencement of the games would allow for the path power elation to spread across the world, as I mentioned earlier, supplying energy from the elation to nearby substances, which ultimately created the correct conditions for imagine or strangelings to come alive. However, they did lack intelligence. Graphia, yet again this name comes up a lot, the one behind the art of imagenesis, used the basis of art and managed to invent imagenetic technology, which allows the designing of more complex and intelligent imagine. There's also a type of imagenesis known as spirit painting, where artists directly imbue their paints with wish power or dip their brushes into wish power. For the next section, let's change the setting a little bit. Alright, class is in session. Today we'll be learning about imagenesis. Do you know what techniques are used when shaping imagine?
Maybe the technique of hitting the jackpot? Because, I myself... I just hit the jackpot!
What the fuck was that? What are you even saying? Okay, let me explain it to you. There are 2 techniques. One is the classical, such as oil painting or Cianjo ink wash styles, and this technique focuses on creating more human-like imagine. An example of these imagine are orcs or light paws. The second one is modern techniques, such as abstract or conceptual art. This technique is used for creating imagine with high practical use. The only downside is that they can't maintain their physical forms for long periods of time. Objects and rooms can become imagine through the use of these modern techniques. Alright, this question is pretty easy, you should know this. Do you know the steps to imagenesis?
What are the steps to imagenesis? Genesis? Like Evangelion?
Get out of my class, right now, get the fuck out.
Oh, sorry.
There are 5 steps to imagenesis: funneling, invoking, shaping, imbuing, and feeding. Funneling is when you funnel wish power towards the substance. Following this, you invoke the intended desires to conceptualize the imagine. Then you shape it, which determines their temperament and initial impression on others. Imbuing is the second last step, which relies on emotional intuition to complete the imagine. However, this step can be skipped if the artist uses spirit painting. And the last, final step is to feed the imagine. Did you get it?
Yeah, I got that. Thank you, Slime Sensei.
That's Imagenesis. Well, most of it at least. Fun fact, Imaginae are now given the same rights as a human due to the IPC and their Fake Kind Protection Act, which also means that they have to pay taxes. And that's everything about the function of planarcadia. If I missed something, let me know. I'm more than happy to respond to you in the comments down below. Now, let's move on to the last section. I'll be talking about how we, as the Trailblazer, influence the story and the current state of planarcadia. This is going to be a fairly short, kinda summary of what's happened so far from our perspective. We enter planarcadia and the crew decides to split up into 3 groups. They are Welt and Himiko, who are tasked with visiting Pearl, the CEO of planarcadia, Danheng and Sunday, who volunteer to seek out the Xianzhou envoy, Yao Guang, to discuss matters about the Anti-Destruction Alliance, and finally, you, the Trailblazer, and March 7th. You guys are asked to learn more about planarcadia by Himiko. Essentially, just explore and decide if you want to participate in the Phantom Moon games or not. You encounter Sparksy and Sparkle, and she doesn't like the Express crew because they're taking attention away from her. So she incites her fans against you. On the other side of the world, Himiko and Welt visit Pearl and emphasize that the Trailblaze must remain independent. But they're willing to act as the sail, cooperating with the Alliance rather than leading it entirely. In the face of Sparksy's threats, Himiko asks you to head to Graphia Academy and retrieve a mask of elation that had been handed down through the Graphia family for generations. At the academy, you fall into Sparksy's cognition modification and experience a false school life. Long story short, Sparksy steals the mask you were supposed to retrieve, and in hopes of escaping the academy, you encounter Ivanicia in the Phantom Moon courtyard, who strikes a deal with you and lends her power to you, draws you a raccoon mask, and officially gives you entry into the Phantom Moon games. Sunday and Danheng then encounter Tingyun at the Sinwish Tower, where they solve some conflict and obtain a mask from the boss of the Sinwish Syndicate. Then Yao Guang shoves a mask onto Sunday's face, making him a supplicant alongside you. To investigate Sparksy's intentions, Sparkle asks you to visit the World's End Tavern to find clues. You and Himiko find the entrance to the tavern, and while on the way, realize that Sparksy was using a mimetic virus to control the academy. You go through a series of events and eventually end up inside the Bliss Star, where the Echo of Primordial Laughter that I mentioned earlier provides you with another mimetic weapon as a countermeasure, the banana. You manage to defeat Sparksy and uncover some secrets of Himiko's past in planarcadia. Ashvale joins the Phantom Moon games to uncover who the Herald of Death is, and Silverwolf also strikes a deal with Pearl for a mask, making her a supplicant as well. All 8 masks had emerged in the Phantom Moon courtyard, so the role the Astral Express in planarcadia right now is to participate and win the Phantom Moon games, not only for the sake of saving planarcadia from the Herald of Death, but also assisting with the Anti-Destruction Alliance. This was a very vague description / summary, but I think it's good enough to give you some idea of the role that we play in the narrative. And that is the end of this video. If you stuck around so far, I really appreciate you watching the entire thing, and if you enjoyed, any sort of support would be greatly appreciated. But let me get to the special message that I was talking about at the start of the video. I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supported my first video. It's entirely blown up, and I did not expect it to get so many views, so many comments, or that much support at all. So if you want to continue supporting me, I've actually started memberships or channel memberships that you can join and get access to early content, more insider information. You probably will have more of an influence on what I post next because I'm also still a pretty small creator, so any sort of support would honestly mean the world to me. Obviously, I'm not asking you to, you have to buy it or you have to join my channel or my community, but if you're gonna do it, it just means a lot to me. But I will still be providing everything to people who don't want to join the community because after all, you guys are still, my supporters, and I'm grateful for every single one of you. The more you guys support me, the more I'll be able to push out this sort of content, and let me know what else you want to see. The next video I'll be making is not something entirely lore related. It's going to be a pretty long one, and I might take a month or 2 to make it. So no promises on the deadline, but I do appreciate all the support all of you have given me, and it's honestly encouraged me so much to do even better for you guys. I also want to say thank you to my friend Haru, who helped me do the voice acting part, and I'll leave his socials down below in the description as well. And if you enjoyed this video, you can join my Discord and talk to me if you have any opinions or anything that you want to tell me. I'm always open to it. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.